Close your eyes for just a second. I want you to picture this. The temperature is sitting at 104 degrees. Sweat is pouring down your face, stinging your eyes. You haven't had a single drop of clean water in, well, hours. And the inside of your boots? They've literally turned into a pool of blood from walking for days on end. And right behind you, you feel the sharp, cold point of a bayonet pressing into your back. Welcome to this explainer on the Battle of Bataan. Today, we're diving deep into what it actually took to endure the largest mass surrender in U.S. military history.
So it really begs the question, could you survive? We're going to put you directly into the boots of a 19-year-old soldier. The year is 1941, and you're stationed over in Manila. Life is, relatively easy. You're standing guard under the palm trees, there's a nice ocean breeze hitting your face, and that raging global war we've all read about, it feels a million miles away. But then, in a terrifying flash, everything changes. Pearl Harbor gets attacked, and shortly after that, bombs are raining down on Clark Field in the Philippines. Suddenly, you are hurled right into the fire.
Section 1. Trapped in the Green Hell, the Unexpected Retreat.
December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor. December 8th, Clark Field is completely devastated. Within minutes, half of the American Air Force in the Philippines is just gone, wiped out. So with American air power totally destroyed, the ground forces are suddenly left with zero cover. General MacArthur is forced to pull the troops back to the Bataan Peninsula. It's this narrow stretch of land that creates a natural choke point. And now, you're stuck there, trapped, facing a highly prepared veteran Japanese army. 99 days. For 99 agonizing days, the Allied forces, that's American and Filipino soldiers fighting side by side, held the line on this tiny peninsula. Think about that. 99 days of being severely under-equipped, fighting on half rations, and completely cut off from any real reinforcements or resupply. This wasn't just a battle. It was a grueling, desperate siege.
Section 2. Nature, the Deadliest Enemy. Surviving the Jungle. Imagine trying to dig a slit trench in 104-degree heat. The humidity is just crushing you. Then, out of nowhere, a massive tropical downpour hits. Flash floods instantly turn your foxhole into this muddy swimming pool, and that's where you have to sleep. Oh, and you're sharing that mud with giant centipedes, venomous spiders, and relentless swarms of mosquitoes. Because of those mosquitoes, things like malaria and dengue fever begin ripping through the ranks right alongside severe dysentery. Nature itself was trying to kill you.
Survival was brutal, just brutal. You're forced to eat spoiled canned meat, and you're throwing these chemical halazone tablets into your muddy drinking water just to avoid a bacterial infection. It made the water taste exactly like a heavily chlorinated swimming pool. And when those canned goods finally ran out, soldiers were desperately scrounging the jungle for absolutely anything they could find just to fill their empty stomachs.
So I'm going to ask you again. Could you hold the line? Picture fighting hand-to-hand in the pitch-black undergrowth of the jungle. Enemy soldiers are slipping through the perimeter, setting up tripwires in the dark. And you're trying to aim your rifle while shivering uncontrollably. Your body is burning up with 104-degree malaria fever. And the worst part? You know that 80% of the medicine that was airdropped to help you just landed in an unreachable swamp.
Section 3. Starvation and Broken Promises. The Collapse of Hope. So first, the commanders cut your food down to half rations. Then, a quarter. Then comes the really heartbreaking order. The beloved horses of the cavalry regiment, they have to be slaughtered for meat. Then the mules are next. When those are all gone, 76,000 starving men have to resort to hunting wild monkeys, catching snakes, and digging up lizards in the bushes. Finally, you're down to surviving on literally nothing but a slice of bread made from rice flour covered in a watery flour gravy.
As the hunger really sets in, a bitter poem starts spreading from trench to trench among the men. They started calling themselves the battling bastards of Bataan. The poem went, "No mama, no papa, no Uncle Sam." The realization had finally set in. Washington had written them off. The Navy wasn't coming.
The Japanese army knew exactly what was happening, and they ruthlessly exploited this despair with a brilliant, devastating psychological warfare campaign. Planes would fly over and drop leaflets right into the American trenches. These leaflets had pictures of steaming baked beans, grilled steaks, giant bowls of ice cream, and a simple message: surrender and we'll feed you. Then at night, massive loudspeakers echo through the dark jungle, playing these nostalgic American love songs, basically begging the starving men to just give up and go home.
Section 4. The Final Mental Collapse. The Breaking Point.
There was a Voice of Freedom radio broadcast that perfectly captured the tragic, almost cinematic end of the defense. Starting on April 3rd, the Japanese launched this massive final bombardment. The sky literally rained fire for days. Entire forests were set ablaze, and trenches just collapsed. Starving men would reach into their pockets to reload, only to click empty magazines into their rifles. They were totally out of bullets. As the broadcast said, the flesh, finally, had to yield.
75,000. On April 9th, 1942, roughly 75,000 starving, exhausted, and diseased American and Filipino men laid down their weapons. To this day, this marks the largest mass surrender in the history of the United States military.
It brings up a really heavy question. What would you do? Your commander, General Douglas MacArthur, who the men had bitterly started calling Dugout Doug, had already secretly evacuated to Australia under orders from the president. You have no food, no medicine, no ammo. General Edward King surrendered the forces simply to prevent the totally pointless slaughter of his men. So you drop your rifle in the mud. But the thing is, the nightmare isn't over.
Section 5. Surviving the Death March. The true nightmare begins.
Over 70,000 prisoners were forced to walk a 65-mile journey in 100-plus degree heat. If you broke ranks just to drink from a muddy puddle or an artesian well by the road, you were shot or bayoneted on the spot. If you collapsed from heat stroke, you were left on the dirt road to die. And when the survivors finally reached the rail lines, men were packed so tightly into these sealed, suffocating boxcars that those who died from heat exhaustion actually remained standing upright, just because there was literally no room to fall.
There was such a cruel irony to their whole situation. Survivor James Bolich later recalled his old first sergeant saying, "You know, that the Japanese would put them in a camp to rest and get fed." Well, that sergeant was dead within 3 weeks. Surrender didn't mean safety. It meant entering an environment of unimaginable cruelty and neglect.
But amidst all of this darkness, there was this profound glimmer of humanity. As the prisoners staggered down these dusty roads, incredibly brave Filipino civilians risked their own lives, facing immediate execution from the guards, just to secretly throw packets of rice, sugar, and water to the starving men. It was this quiet, desperate network of compassion right in the middle of hell.
Section 6. Could you have survived? The legacy of Bataan.
Now, the horrific conditions of the march and the prison camps were severely exacerbated by one massive logistical failure. The Japanese military only expected to capture about 25,000 prisoners. They were entirely unprepared to transport, feed, or house the actual reality of over 75,000 men. This failure, combined with a cultural military view at the time that surrendered soldiers were dishonorable, skyrocketed the horrific death toll.
Inside prison camps like Odenal and Cabanatuan, the mortality rates were just staggering. Men were dropping constantly from dysentery, starvation, and malaria. At its peak, Camp Odenal was losing 50 Americans and up to 400 Filipinos every single day. In July 1942 alone, 799 Americans died just in Cabanatuan. It was a daily, grinding fight just to keep breathing until liberation finally came years later in 1945.
Look at what these men endured. Stripped of their weapons, their commanders, their food, and their health. Enduring a jungle that actively wanted to kill them, a government that couldn't save them, and an enemy that showed absolutely no mercy. They were left with nothing but their raw, human will to live. So, if you were placed in those boots, under that burning sun, could you have survived Bataan? Take a moment to really think about that, and what it actually means to hold the line.